And to take that and to place that in the hands of the government is exactly what was advocated by those people who want to see fundamental change in America. Go back and read the writings of Saul Alinsky and Vladimir Lenin and all the neo-Marxists. And they say, what you have to do in order to change the United States, which they felt was the stick in the mud to a new world order, is you have to bring the people into subjugation to the government. The best way and the fastest way to do that is to take control of the most important thing they have, which is their health care.
Dr. Benjamin Carson is more than just an accomplished neurosurgeon. He's a Presidential Medal of Freedom winner, an accomplished author, and the individual who gave a speech at the 2013 National Prayer Breakfast that is still resonating across the country today. He is a man with pointed views and opinions on America and what this country desperately needs going forward. I recently had the rare opportunity to sit down with Dr. Carson for an exclusive interview with Obamacare at the forefront of his thinking. In your book, one of those things that jumped out at me was when you discussed Obamacare. And you called Obamacare the worst thing since slavery. Now, I'll be honest, I went back, I did a double take. When I looked at that, went back and read it again, back and forth, wanted to make sure I got that. You have taken a lot of heat from that. So explain a little bit what you meant by that, because I know there's a lot deeper meaning than just the phrase itself.
Right. Well, what I'm talking about is the fact that it fundamentally shifts, Obamacare does, a huge amount of power from the people to the government. And the most valuable thing that you have as an individual is your health. Think about it this way. If someone says, I'll give you $1 billion, but you have to be a quadriplegic, or you can be whole, but no money, which would you take? I don't think it would take many people very long to say, forget the $1 billion, I want my health. It's by far the most important thing you have. And to take that and to place that in the hands of the government is exactly what was advocated by those people who want to see fundamental change in America. Go back and read the writings of Saul Alinsky and Vladimir Lenin and all the neo-Marxists. And they say, what you have to do in order to change the United States, which they felt was the stick in the mud to a new world order, is you have to bring the people into subjugation to the government. The best way and the fastest way to do that is to take control of the most important thing they have, which is their health care. Ultimately, what that leads to is a situation where the government controls not only your health, but virtually every other aspect of your life. And those people who have done a lot of reading, not just American literature, but literature of the world and the various systems, know exactly what I'm talking about. The vast majority of people haven't, so they have no idea what I'm talking about. But even them listening to the explanation and seeing what's happening, they will begin to understand in very short order if we don't change this.
Are we right back to education again, though, about people educating themselves about their health care, about their health, about what is out there, to understand it a little better instead of just being handed something and say, here, this is what you need to do?
Absolutely. The more you know, the easier it is to understand these things that we're talking about and understand systems of government. And here's the key thing. It's not necessary to take the most important thing we have and place it in the hands of the government. Not by any stretch of the imagination. For a lot less money, utilizing things that I've talked about in the book, particularly health savings accounts, people have control of their own health. They decide where the dollars go, how they're spent, who they want to see. And what that will do is bring the whole healthcare system into the free market. That's what controls cost. That's what controls quality. You'll never get that kind of quality and control from a bureaucratic system.
Two of the biggest contentious issues in America right now have to be abortion and gay marriage. Quite frankly, there are some people saying that there is no compromise here, that you can't have it on that. But after reading the book and going through a lot of your ideas and your thinkings, I believe there is a compromise here to be had.
Well, of course there is. You know, people have to be willing to understand that not everybody thinks the same way that they do. And what they have to be willing to do is engage in conversation. I talk a lot about getting rid of political correctness and replacing it with civil discourse. And, you know, for instance, let's take gay marriage. A lot of people say, oh, Carson's a homophobe because he believes that marriage is between a man and a woman. That's ridiculous. You know, yes, I do believe that it's between a man and a woman, but I don't believe that anybody gets to change the definition of something that is a societal pillar and has been there for thousands of years. If they want to form some other kind of relationship and call it something else, I don't have any problem with that. I don't think I can impose my will on any two consenting adults. They can do what they want to do. I'm not going to try to stop them from doing that. But they don't get to change the definition. And as I said in the book, it's sort of like a new group of mathematicians. They come along, and they say 2 + 2 is 5. And the traditionalists say, no, it's 4. It's always been 4. It always will be 4. And the new ones say, no, we insist that it's 5. So the traditionalists say, okay, I'll tell you what, for you it can be 5. We're keeping it as 4. And the new ones say, no, no, it has to be 5 for you, and if it's not, then you're a mathist or mathophobe, you know. And you know, basically that's the situation we find ourselves in. And I asked a prominent individual in the gay community, I said, well, what position could a person take who believes in traditional marriage that would be satisfactory to you? And after thinking about it for a while, I said, there is no other position. You have to embrace gay marriage. That's the only position that's acceptable to us. That sounds a little bit like intolerance to me. It sounds like my way or the highway. And I think even though gays suffered a lot of discrimination in the past, and I denounced that in the book, I don't think that's the right way to treat anybody. But that doesn't mean that you get to change everything for everybody else. You know, on the abortion issue, I totally understand why some people use that as their litmus test. And they say, I can't in any way support anybody who would allow babies to be killed. What I say to those individuals is, think about the story of Esther in the Bible. She was a Jew. The Jews were being oppressed. She hid her identity, and by so doing was able to marry the king and to deliver her people who were slated for extinction from her position. Now, I'm sure that there were those before she was able to persuade the king to do what he did, they were saying, she's a traitor. She's ashamed of who she is. We hate her, you know, and on, because they were looking at the little picture and she was looking at the big picture. And, you know, we have to be able to engage everybody in this conversation. What we're seeing as time goes on is more and more people are starting to recognize that little baby is actually a precious human being. You know, you take a 10 or 12 week fetus and you can put an endoscope in there and you can see their little nose and their little fingers and their little hands and their hearts beating, and you know, they're starting to react to stimulation. And the brain is developing at that point at a rate of 400 million new neurons every day. And this is a creature that is considerably more sophisticated than a snail darter and some of these things that people go through great lengths to try to save. And I wonder if they ever stop and think about the irony of that.
Coming up tomorrow, Dr. Carson talks about the Judeo-Christian ethic that appears to be disappearing in America. He also talks about the persecution of Christians, which is certainly increasing around the world. We also want to remind you that you can get a copy of Dr. Carson's New York Times #1 best-selling book, One Nation, what we can all do to save America's future at bookstores everywhere, or go to newsmax.com/Ben to get your free copy. Just one of those things that I wanted to pass on to, because after reading the book, many times I have said, and you people have heard me say this many times, I say this to friends and anyone I speak to whenever I do any kind of speaking engagements, I tell them one of the most important things is education, because we live in a time in a society right now where, thanks to the internet, we have the ability to learn so much. Well, Dr. Carson, when he was a child, he and his brother, his mother limited their TV time, would not let them watch a lot of TV, and she had them go out and read 2 library books a week. Now, she would then tell her children, you have to come home, you have to give me a written report on each book after you read them. So the kids would come out, Ben and his brother, they would create the report and give it to their mother. Their mother would look over the report, she would check it, and she would just put a check mark and just show them that she had approved of what they had read and what they said. Well, the thing about it was his mother really couldn't read a lot of what was on the page, but she did it, and she just placed the check mark at the top of the page to show her approval. And that made those kids realize and made them think that their mother was there for them, and the mother was taking time to educate them and making sure that they learned. If you read the book, you'll find out that Dr. Carson really did not enjoy the regimen whatsoever. He didn't like it, but after several weeks, he started to understand what the value of it was, and he started to understand the education that he got from it. It still comes down to the basics, and that's the one thing that came out to me in the book every chance I got. And I read it a few times, actually, because I read books a few times just to get the gist of them, that it was all about education. It's all about the opportunity to educate. Let me remind you again, you can get a copy of Dr. Carson's book, just in case. You can go to the best-selling bookstores anywhere you want. You can go ahead and check it out there. It is the New York Times #1 best-selling book, One Nation. And you can also go to newsmax.com/Ben to get your copy as well. And don't forget, tomorrow more of our exclusive one-on-one interview with Dr. Ben Carson. Stay with us. MidPoint continues.